still one of my favorite fictional characters, and my feelings are just as complicated as the plot and the magic. Hello and welcome to the BookTube channel, Jack in the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. In this video, I'm continuing on with one of my reading projects for 2024, which is reading the Stormlight Archives fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson. If this is your first time tuning into this series, this is not the place to start out with first. You want to check out video number 1, where I am reading The Way of Kings, which is book 1 in the series. I did an awesome reading vlog for that. And then you can move on to video number 2, where I am reading book number 2 and kind of reacting to it, sharing my opinions and my thoughts. I don't have any theories in these videos because these are really complex books. So my goal is not to theorize or guess where the story is going to go. My goal is just to hold on for dear life and try and understand and just enjoy the journey. And that is exactly what I'm going to do in this video as I am reading book 3, which is Oathbringer. And this is a hefty book. This is 1,200 pages. I've already started it, so I can tell you a little bit about this. But before I dive into that, I had to do a little bit of background research, and that was by reading book 2.5, which is Edgedancer. This is a little novella that takes place in between books 2 and 3. And it was interesting. I didn't read the synopsis or know anything about it when I went into it, but we are following a character named Lift. And at the beginning, I remember what was going on. So I don't know if that was maybe in one of the interludes or something else in like one of the other books, but that was really familiar. And then the story just continued on from there. And it was very difficult to be in the point of view of someone who claims to be 10 years old, but who is probably more like 13. Very difficult to be in her point of view as a character because she's so young, and I got really sick and tired of her obsession over food. But it was also very cute and snarky at times with her sprin that's like attached to her. I liked that. And there was one point in particular that really captures the tone of this book that I wanted to share with you. At the very beginning of chapter 9, I'm on page 149 in this edition. We have Lift and her sprin called Wendell. And I'm just going to read you some of the dialogue from Wendell because he's so cute and sarcastic and he makes me chuckle. "Just try not to die too violently, mistress," Wendell said as she crept closer to the sounds of people talking. "A nice rap on the head rather than in disaboweling." "I hear that suffocation is nice," Wendell said. "Though, in such a case, don't look at me as you expire. I'm not really sure I can handle it." "I'm not sure about falling to your death," Wendell added. "Seems like it might be messy, but at the same time, at least there wouldn't be any stabbing." Wendell just made me laugh, and his personality really added to this lighthearted tone, even if the rest of the lightheartedness really grated on my nerves, because Lift, with her obsession with food and overuse of the word awesome and awesomeness, if I never read the word awesome again, that would be ideal, because I've used up my capacity on this book. But in the use case, it makes sense, right? It's not written poorly. She's just referring to her abilities as her awesomeness. So this book was kind of so-so. I didn't really understand the point too much. But then at the end, there's a postscript that Brandon Sanderson wrote, and it added a lot of context into the necessity of this. So he says, "Lift is one of my favorite characters from the Stormlight Archive, despite the fact that she has very little screen time so far. I'm grooming her for a larger role in the future of the series, but this leaves me with some challenges. By the time Lift becomes a main Stormlight character, she'll have already sworn several of the oaths, and it feels wrong not to show readers the context of her swearing these oaths. In working on Stormlight 3, I also noticed a small continuity issue. By the time we see him again in the book, the Herald Nail will have accepted that his work of many centuries is no longer relevant. This is a major shift in who he is and his goals and an individual, and it felt wrong to have him undergo this realization off screen. So Edgedancer is the opportunity to fix both of these problems and to give Lift her own showcase." Well, I can say that at this point she is not my favorite Stormlight character, but I'll take Brandon for his word and just trust him. So after I finished Edge Dancer, I went ahead and picked up Oathbringer. Now you're with me at present time. I just finished part 1 of the book. I'm just about to read the interludes. Joy there. I really don't like those all that much. But part 1 picks up 6 days after the end of book 2. So only 6 days have passed, and in real time, I'm trying to read one of these every other month, but jumping back into it, I've already forgotten so much. Like, I remembered the overall plot, but there was like one cliffhanger I completely forgot about, and I was just reminded of it at the end of part 1. So I'm like really excited about that. So Dalinar is still tormented over what's right, what action to take, how to continue on with his brother's dying words of unite them. So he's trying to figure that out. Adolin, we haven't gotten too much from his point of view. He's in a little bit of a sticky situation, but I haven't spent too much time with him. Kaladin, still one of my favorite fictional characters. I enjoy all of his chapters so much. So he is embracing his new powers. He went home to visit his family, and I loved that whole scene because they didn't know that he was still alive. So I really got a lot of satisfaction over that whole visit. So he's off on his journey. Shallan, okay, here's the thing. I felt neutral about her in book 1. Book 2, I felt like she really evolved and came into her own, and I loved how smart she was, how strategic, and I feel like she's regressing in this book a little bit. She's kind of splitting off into multiple personalities because she's so insecure and not sure how to act that she's developing these different personalities, and I don't like that. I thought in book 2 she was really headed in a direction where she was growing up and maturing, and so I'm kind of bummed to see this happening, and I'm getting pretty frustrated with her when she keeps kind of defaulting to this, like, oh, I have to put on a different face now because I don't know how to handle this uncomfortable situation, and she's kind of bugging me. There is an element of like a murder mystery in this that I am surprisingly enjoying. At the end of part 1, we get some direction on what is actually happening because the circumstances of these crimes are very suspicious. And so I've enjoyed watching that unfold. And now that we have some direction on that, I'm kind of enjoying it. So the pace is a little bit faster in this one, like comparing it to book 1, where I felt like it was all foundation setting and world building. A little bit more plot going on, not as much character development as I'd like to see, especially with Shallan, who's regressing. But it is kind of capturing my attention so far. But it is really long, and I have the audiobook for it, so I am immersively reading it or like switching back and forth, and that is going really well. But I really have to power through this because I only have a couple days left in this audiobook, so I'll have to like see if I can get it from a different library or what I can do. But that is about a quarter of the way in. I think I'm like 26% of the way in. So today is Friday. I have all weekend to dedicate to this, so I'm hoping I can make some good progress, and of course update you along the way. This chapter had a revelation and explanation that is pretty important regarding the heralds and who they are, but I am still so confused. I had to reread it like 3 times, and I still need help. I was just listening to the Oathbringer audiobook while I was getting my nails filled, and it was kind of cool because Lift was introduced, or she's back. I'm not sure how to word it, but she appeared in the most annoying way. Yeah, I really don't like her. I think it's just the young kid point of view that she's so obnoxious, and I like Brandon Sanderson's like humor and the levity in the tone he kind of sprinkles in, but this just seems so forced and out of place, kind of like he's laughing at his own jokes, but I'm not laughing. I'm just really annoyed by Lift. Luckily, it was a brief appearance, but I'm sure that we're not done with her. One of my favorite characters, the Wit, is back, and I love reading the dialogue between him and Shallan. It's so quirky and entertaining, although it is very confusing for me to remember details about Wit because he is so similar to the Fool in the Realm of the Elderlings series by Robin Hobb. And I was talking to my friend about that, and he said that Brandon Sanderson has admitted that the Wit is his version, or Wit is his version of the Fool, like his nod to Robin Hobb. So I guess I'm not crazy for thinking that, but reading Robin Hobb this year in 2024 and Stormlight Archives is a little bit confusing. I'm mixing up some of the details, I'm sure. Here is an example of the dialogue that I'm really enjoying from Wit. "Power is a knife," Wit said, taking a seat. "A terrible, dangerous knife that can't be wielded without cutting yourself. We joked about stupidity, but in reality, most people aren't stupid. Many are simply frustrated at how little control they have over their lives. They lash out, sometimes in spectacular ways." Well, I think that's pretty relevant. I don't know if there are enough words to convey how much I hate the character Shallan in this book. As much as I loved her in the last book, is how much I cannot stand her in this book. So her ability to shift her appearance is great. That's useful for different disguises and stuff, right? But now that she's developing this like split personality disorder, and she shifts into this other identity, she has Vale, and she's like, Vale thinks like this, and Vale would say that. And she's disguising her insecurities in these different identities. And something I hate in books is insecurities, when insecurities drive actions. And we all have insecurities, so of course our characters would have them too, but Shallan is consumed by her insecurities. And I really am having a hard time with her self-deprecating inner monologues, like as Vale, when she's like, oh, and Shallan is horrible at this and bad at that, and why can't she be more like that? And I can't stand it. And I was already really frustrated. And then what's worse is she's thinking, oh, as Vale, I can go flirt with this other person, even though I'm already betrothed to someone who's a really good guy. So something else I don't like in books is cheating. And she's trying to talk herself into, hey, it's okay to flirt with someone else because I'm in this other identity. And I don't like it. I can't stand Shallan's chapters. Like, it makes me want to DNF the book if I wasn't committed to like reading the whole series. And I can't just skip her chapters because like plot stuff might happen. So overall, I'm pretty cranky. I have finished Oathbringer, all 1,233 pages of it, and my feelings are just as complicated as the plot and the magic. For about 80% of this book, it was reading like a low 3 stars for me, but in true Brandon Sanderson fashion, the last 20%, I couldn't put it down. It was 5 stars, maybe even 6 stars. I loved it so much. Let me start with my favorite element of this book, which continues to be the characters. Now, you know that I don't love all the characters all the time. Shallon's self-deprecating ways never appealed to me. She drove me crazy in the entire book, and I do feel like a lot of the other main characters regressed as well. Dalinar and Kaladin, I feel like the growth that we had from them in book 2 was like erased in book 3, and they were both dealing with some difficult things, and even though everybody still wants to do the right thing, they're still very much tormented with what that right thing is. They're feeling self-conscious, they're feeling unworthy, they're feeling guilty, they're just, I mean, all very human emotions, right? So I guess I can't fault them that much for it. In the other 2 books, it was mentioned that Dalinar has some gaps in his memory, but we do get that addressed in this book, and I thought that was really interesting, and learning more about him, his past, his struggles, what made him the man he is, and then him facing some difficult things now. So I liked his story in this, and him, but mostly Kaladin, but Dalinar a little bit as well. I like how they really struggled with, does this person deserve to die? So there's a war going on. There's always a war going on with epic fantasy, I feel like. But they're really examining questions of, do I have the right to take these lives? And just because we're enemies doesn't mean they need to die. And they're having difficulties with taking lives. And so I really like examining that, and that really supports all the things I've been saying in my other videos of these characters having a good sense of morality. Now let's talk about the thing that I struggled with the most in Oathbringer, or the thing that I continue to struggle with, and that's the magic, the world building, and really the plot, because the plot is kind of centered around all this magic that's going on. And this book really has me questioning if I could even enjoy epic fantasy or high fantasy. I really don't know the difference between epic and high fantasy, so I use the terms interchangeably and probably incorrectly. But it has me wondering if this is even a genre I could enjoy. I mean, I'm going to continue to read it because every book and every series is different, but the intricacies of the magic has me entirely lost, and I continue to feel kind of stupid when I'm reading this. I understand the overarching plot, and I am invested, I am intrigued, but when there is a plot twist or a reveal, usually it has to do with the magic, I can recognize that it's a big deal, but it doesn't mean anything to me. It's not impacting me. I'm not holding onto it or sinking my teeth into it because I really don't understand the details that well. I understand that the Knights Radiance are selected, chosen ones, and they have different powers between them, and they're the ones that can save the world against the Voidbringers, who are the bad guys. I understand the Spren and how they're like kind of attached to these Knight Radiants, and they have different abilities, but then there's also different Spren, like Fear Spren, Hunger Spren, Shame Spren, with like that pop up with different emotions, and I understand how they're linked to more of the abilities of the Knights Radiant. I get kind of lost on their history and like what certain events mean related to the Spren. I have no idea what's going on between the Stormfather, the Almighty, Odium, and like just like the gods element. I'm kind of confused. And then the Heralds, I think they're good guys, or they tried to be good guys, but then they gave up on humanity. Is that right? Am I close? There were different, like we had an explanation chapter, I even mentioned it, where it was like explained, and I had to read it so many times, and I'm like, it's still not grasping it. And then there were additional scenes related to the Heralds, and I have no idea. And then there are these other characters that I think were like in the godlike category. I don't know, one of them was like waking up after 4,000 years, and I feel like that's supposed to be significant, but I don't know how or why. And then there's also these, are they oath gates? That are like portals. I think I understand that, like how they can move a whole army from like one place to another, like a whole group of people. So I get that. There was like this other dimension that I think I understood, but I didn't like because that's too sci-fi for my taste. Typically don't like portal fantasy and like other dimensions, but I'm prepared with that with like the Cosmere that Brandon Sanderson writes. So, you know, whatever. You can't get mad that there's like magic in a fantasy book, but that's not typically my thing. And when they were in that other dimension and there were like spheres instead of water or something, I was like, oh God, this is too much. Like, why do we have to jam so much in? Like, it gets so diluted. Like, the significance and the impact gets so diluted for me because I'm so confused. There was an element of a plot twist related to the Voidbringers that I was really surprised by and impressed by, and this really introduces a new source of conflict or inner conflict for our characters and what they're examining related to this reveal. I think that was like my favorite part when that was revealed. That really shocked me, and that's part of the section where I started to really enjoy what I was reading, because again, I love the characters and how they're reacting to certain situations. I think that's my favorite part of this series. It's the characters, but the characters reacting to what's going on. As for the writing style, this was very fast-paced, very action-heavy, lots of battle scenes, and despite me really not enjoying the complexity of the magic and the world, I do really like the writing, and there's so much that I wanted to underline when I was reading it. I already know I have to reread this series because I'm so lost, but I think something that makes me excited about rereading one day, and I'm anticipating it, is I think I want to annotate it, because there's so much that stood out to me, like in the dialogue and the different ways of thinking of our characters. But I think annotating it, again, like going through one read of it and then going back and like highlighting things that are like explained or like foreshadowing or something could be really helpful down the line. But that I'm not planning that anytime soon because this is already quite the commitment. So I said the first 80% was like a low 3-star and the final 20% was like a 5-star. So this isn't a weighted average, but I think I'm going to land on a final rating of 4 stars for Oathbringer. I'm still really frustrated though because 3 books in, well over 3,000 pages, I'm probably at like 3,500 pages at this point, I'm disappointed that I'm still so confused and I'm still feeling really dumb. And again, it has me questioning if this is a segment, a subgenre of fantasy that is for me. And I want it to be. I really want it to be because, like I said, I'm recognizing that things are significant. I'm just not feeling it because I'm not totally comprehending it. And that's not fun anymore. I'd say most of this book I did not have fun reading. But Brandon Sanderson can really write an ending. And I understand enough of the overarching plot that I am really intrigued to see what's going to happen next. So it's like I'm not enjoying the reading experience, but when I reflect back on it, I enjoyed it, if that makes sense. That's kind of a difficult way to explain this book. I did like it. It's 4 stars. I just like it better now, reflecting back. And then when I was like, oh gosh, I have to pick up Oathbringer, I have to keep reading it, I have to be done with it. So that is my final review of Oathbringer. I would love some encouragement from you in the comments down below. Please be sure to mark your comment if you're going to spoil anything. I try to keep this review kind of high level, but I'm also not that paranoid about it because this is book 3 in a series. So, you know, spoilers. But if you're going to spoil something, if you're going to explain something to me, which I need, feel free to correct me in the comments below or give me some motivation or some encouragement because I have some more to read in this series, and I do still really love Brandon Sanderson. He's one of my favorite authors, so I think more will be made clear to me. I was talking to one of my friends today. He said that Rhythm of War will provide some clarity, and he was like messaging with me trying to explain some things, and it really helps. Your comments and explanations really help. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this reading vlog, and I look forward to hanging out with you in the next one where I continue reading the Stormlight Archive.